Am I the asshole for making an obese man pay me cash to take up part of my seat on a long flight? So, this month I was flying across the country on a long 5-hour flight, which I had booked and seats selected for. I specifically chose an aisle seat in a row of 2, so no middle seat, just the aisle and window. Well, a very obese man boards, and I can tell instantly he is going to have a tough time fitting in any of the seats. I assume maybe he bought 2, hence why he's even attempting to board. I'm mentally crossing my fingers he's not next to me, but sure enough, he ends up pointing to the window seat next to me to let him in. I get up and let him in politely, wanting to at least give him a chance. Well, he sits down and is easily seeping into about a third of my seat. I sit down and am pressed up against him, making me uncomfortable. After a minute, I decided to be upfront and tell him. I said, "Sir, I'm sorry, but this situation is not working for me. You're taking up quite a bit of my seat." He wasn't rude, but sort of gave me a shrug as if there's nothing he can do. Although he did sort of tighten his arms in to try and be narrower. It just wasn't enough though. He still was overhanging over the armrest about a quarter of the way into my seat, even when squeezing his arms in. I'm talking about fully hanging over the armrest into my seat. I end up stopping a flight attendant and ask her what can be done about the situation. She instantly tells him that he is likely going to need to purchase another seat. She goes to the front and comes back saying that there are not any open seats on this flight, so there wasn't a way to move people so he could have 2. This causes a very awkward silence. The guy seemed embarrassed and didn't want to get up. He mentioned how he can't wait for a later flight. I felt bad for him, but I was also thinking about my own comfort on the long flight, the comfort that I paid for. The flight attendant tells him that unless someone on the flight agrees to let him take up part of their seat, he will need to book another flight. The guy seems really flustered by this ultimatum. And here is where I made an offer. I told the guy, "Look, I'll put up with this if you give me $150. That's half the cost of this flight, and that would compensate me enough for the circumstances." He instantly agrees, pulls out cash, and pays me. He even told me that he appreciated it. Well, the people sitting behind me, who kept in mind didn't volunteer to sit by him, were making under their breath comments about me being an asshole for doing that. I just ignored them and put the cash in my wallet. From my perspective, I gave the guy a valid option to stay on the flight, and I was compensated for literally having only 75% of my seat max, let alone the feeling of a person's body pressed against you involuntarily. A win-win. He wasn't angry at all. If anything, he seemed quite relieved and we could work it out privately. After the flight, the couple behind me glared at me, but I ignored them. This leads me to beg the question, am I the asshole for making an obese man pay me cash to take up part of my seat on a long flight? Am I the asshole for removing my baby's earrings immediately after my wife pierced them? My wife and I have a 2-month-old daughter, Alicia. We've been having the piercing debate since before she was born. She comes from a culture where it's the normal thing, but I'm just not comfortable with a painful process like that and would prefer to wait until she's older so she can choose whether to go through that for herself. While we still hadn't made a decision, my wife went for a day with her family with the baby while I had a few things I needed to sort out. When I got home, the first thing I noticed was that Alicia had a pair of gold studs. I demanded to know what had happened, and she said they decided to make a day of it and just get them done. I felt pure rage and immediately removed the earrings and threw them away. This enraged my wife, and she said removing them was totally disrespectful. She slept in the spare room last night and isn't speaking to me at all. As far as I'm concerned, I did the right thing. My wife got them pierced without asking me, or more importantly, asking our 2-month-old daughter, Alicia. So I took them out because our baby doesn't need bits of metal sticking out of her ears. So, am I the asshole for telling my stepdaughter to, quote unquote, go ask her real dad when she asked me to pay for her plane tickets? I married my wife, Elise, 12 years ago. She has a 16-year-old daughter, Anna, from her previous relationship, and we have a 7-year-old together as well. From pretty much the beginning of our relationship, Anna and I have never gotten along. I don't know how to emphasize that is not because of a lack of trying. She just does not like me. When she was young, she was just scared of me and afraid I'd tear their family apart. Nowadays, it's more of a neutral dislike rather than strong antipathy, so I suppose that's progress. Elise is a stay-at-home mother, so she relies on me for income. As a result, I pay for everything for Anna: food, clothes, volleyball fees, field trips. I take an interest in her hobbies. I go to her games. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I try my dang hardest to be the stepfather that I can. But it is so hard. Always giving me short one-word responses, always having an attitude. She does things to get a rise out of me, staying out late, reeking of booze, always trying to sneak boys in, typical rebellious stuff. But I always let her know I love her and I'm here for her in hopes of her, quote-unquote, shithead teenager phase pasts. The opposite is true for her biological father. She adores him. She can't tell you why. He never goes to her games, always makes excuses for why he doesn't want to see her. He forgot her birthday last month and she cried herself to sleep. Well, anyways, Friday, I came to her room to check her phone and read her messages. Not a permanent thing, but she's been caught sneaking out twice in the last month. So this is her punishment. I ask for her phone. She says, "No, I'm tired of you checking my shit. Leave me alone." I tell her I'm not asking again, and she goes, "Just F off already. You're not my real dad. You never have been. Stop acting like you can tell me what to do before getting up and slamming the door." Like I said, guys, I'm tired of the blatant disrespect, of being the verbal punching bag while still providing more for her than anyone else in her family. We haven't really talked since until this morning during breakfast. She asked if I could pay for her plane tickets so she could stay. Like I said, her mom doesn't work and her dad is a POS, so I normally would be the one to cough up the money. Not this time. I responded, quote unquote, "Go ask your real dad." I could tell she was hurt. Tears swelled up from her face and she excused herself from the table. My wife took me aside later and said my comment was extremely disrespectful. I said, if anything's disrespectful, it's her treating me like a doormat and a credit card, and I will no longer tolerate this treatment in my house. I told her we don't have to be friends, but if she can't at least be cordial to me or respect my position as an authority figure, she can find someone else to pay for her non-essentials. So, am I the asshole for telling my stepdaughter to go ask her real dad when she asked me to pay for her plane tickets? Update: Am I the asshole for telling my stepdaughter to go ask her real dad when she asked me to pay for her plane tickets? Hey guys, it's been a good 2 weeks since I've posted, and I figured you guys would like an update. A lot has happened since the last time I posted. So that night, I did what many of the comments suggested I do, which was to apologize. I told her that I was sorry for implying that I'm not her real father, but like it or not, I consider her my daughter, that I loved her and will always be there for her. She started to cry and sob uncontrollably and said, "Why doesn't he, her biological father, love me?" I held her and told her she didn't need to fight for his approval. I also apologized for looking through her phone, that I've come to accept that it's not an appropriate punishment for a teenage girl, and I was going to find other alternatives. Lastly, I brought up therapy, and while she was hesitant at first, I let her know that it was nothing to be ashamed of, that everything she said at therapy would be entirely confidential, and that it could help to have a confidant to help her sort through her feelings. She sat on this for the day, but the next day let me know that she was ready, so I set up the soonest appointment, which was last Friday, and her second appointment is this afternoon. It's only been a week, so I don't want to get too optimistic, but honestly, I feel like I'm noticing an improvement already. She's actually been engaging back in small talk when normally she wouldn't give me the time of day. She's been following all of the rules, coming home at a reasonable hour. She's been less withdrawn and more social, even to the point where her brother commented on the change today. But the most exciting news of them all is when getting out of the car on her way home from therapy, she said, and I quote, "Thanks, Dad." She's never called me dad before, so honestly, I've been riding off that high for the last 2 hours. I'm not delusional enough to think everything's peachy, but honestly, the behavior change in the last week was the most progress we've had since, well, ever. I'm cautiously optimistic going forward. Thanks again, everyone, for your comments, especially the ones who gave me the kick in the ass I needed. Am I the asshole for telling the girl who kissed my boyfriend for a play that she is desperate and pathetic? I, 19 female, study drama at UNI, and my boyfriend is on the same course. My boyfriend is a really good-looking guy, but he doesn't seem to know it. He gets a lot of attention from girls, and for the most part, doesn't seem to get that they're flirting with him. I'm not generally annoyed by this and never really say anything. However, there's one girl in our class, let's call her Victoria, who is obsessed with my boyfriend. She goes out of her way to be paired with him in group activities. For example, if the professor picks groups by numbering us 1, 2, 3, she will move herself to be in the same number as him. She recently stepped down from a main role in a play we're doing so she could be in a more minor one, simply because this character has a romance with my boyfriend. I know this is the case because I've heard her say to her friends that she thinks he's hot and whatnot. I've never said anything to her about it because she seems pretty insecure, always complaining about how she thinks she's ugly. And I don't see it as a big deal because my boyfriend doesn't care. However, we recently performed the play and had a small after party where she got slightly drunk and was bragging about how she definitely felt something when they kissed in the play, and she's going to ask him if he felt the same. I rolled my eyes and again ignored it until she actually went up to my boyfriend. She was a little bit drunk, and when she went up to him, I was there too. Victoria started saying that she knows he must have felt a spark. He's a really good kisser, etc. I snapped and sort of shouted at her that, You sound incredibly desperate going after somebody else's boyfriend. You're pathetic if you think a stage kiss means you should be together. She looked super embarrassed and walked away, and I later heard she'd gone home crying. I felt like a dick because she is obviously insecure and whatnot, and her friends haven't stopped calling me a B since. So, am I the asshole for telling the girl who kissed my boyfriend for a play that she is desperate and pathetic?